And welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Benched with Bubba, episode 815. It's going to be a fun one today, folks. We got a returning guest to the show. I always enjoy when I get to chat with him in Arizona, Vegas, wherever. He is a really great mind and a better person in the streets of fantasy. He even made a red-eye flight to go to a wedding in Atlanta when he was in Arizona. Dude's crazy. But he has an awesome site called fantasy.io, but it's spelled PHANTASEA, like the C.io, and it is just all the data you could possibly want from the NFBC. And he's going to help us break it down and more to get you ready for 2026. You can find him on Twitter at Steve O Swerve. Stephen Goodwin, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing good. Thank you very much, Bubba. I'm enjoying the winter and can't believe baseball's 2 months away. So starting to get really ramped up baseball-wise, and I'm excited to pod today.
I'm excited to have you pod. I know, like I kind of hinted that we talked in Arizona, and I said, okay, I want you on this off season, but you let me know when you're ready, because I know like you got all your prep. So once you started tweeting things out, I was like, okay, maybe. So like I put a feeler out there, and we locked it in because you're always doing cool stuff. Before we get into a lot of the cool stuff we're going to discuss today, I kind of said where they can find it, but remind everybody you got your website, what you got going on. You put articles on X, like you got a lot. You're a busy man with some goods.
Yeah, so I'm just very passionate about the NFBC, and I've been over the last couple of years getting involved on X and been creating this site, fantasy.io. That's with a PH instead of F and an SEA, like the ocean, instead of Y. And my site, fantasy.io, is all about the NFBC, looking at the roto data and understanding like how successful teams are winning in the NFBC, breaking it all down to like make it easy for not just players that have been around the NFBC, but new players coming in. Like there's so much to learn in this data, and I think that it should be easily available. So I've been creating cool tools and ways to visualize the data to help people learn, play the game of roto.
Yep. No, you are doing a great job of that. So, like, even my little brain can figure out what's going on with all this, which is awesome. So, I'm looking forward to discussing this. You said you're getting ready to start drafting. You told me before the show. So, way more diligence than I ever will have. But what's your plans this year, like for your drafts? Have you mapped that out yet, or are you still kind of winging it for now?
No, so I think I know what I'm doing. I am toning it back this year. So the last 2 years have been especially the OC. I've really volume attacked the OC. I'm bringing down my fab leagues this year. Last year I had 18 fab leagues. I can manage that. I love it, but I want to bring that down to be able to focus on my site more. I'm already signed up for the Champions League, and I signed up for an auction championship league that I'll be doing at the Godfather Games in New Jersey. So part of the CLQ in the AC, and I'm probably going to do about 4 or 5 OCs this year. And I will probably add a second auction that I'll do in Vegas as well, although I haven't added that, and possibly another main event. But I am trying to tone it back. I want to have more time to focus on those specific leagues, but also have more time to like do the content stuff I've been doing.
Yep, the content stuff's great, and if you could stay out of my auction in Vegas, I would appreciate it. So that would be great as well. But let's get into it. We have 4 topics that you have brought to the table today. I will listen closely and take notes to ask you even more questions on them. But I am very, very excited. I'm pretty sure, tell me if I'm wrong, mostly, if not all of this data can be found at fantasy.io for the most part. So let's kick it off. This one's great because one thing Ryan and I like to do is try to bring as many new people to the NFBC platform as possible. But some people don't want to go to the big dollar events because it seems scary. Should it seem scary, Steve?
So what I have here, Bubba, is some data on who won the leagues in the main event the last 2 years, 2024 and 2025. So in 2020, and in both years, the main event was 855 teams. There were 57 leagues in both years. I'm going to start with real quick 2024, and then I'm going to jump to 2025. In 2024, there were 57 main event leagues. There were 51 unique players that won those leagues. So 2 players won 2 leagues and 2 players won 3 leagues. 51 unique total players that won the leagues. There were 26 first-time main event winners in 2024. 26. There were 16 single entry main event winners in 2024. What I mean by single entry is they only played one main event. Okay. Now I'm going to switch to 2025, and I have some, after that, I've got some stories too. But in 2025, there were also 57 main event leagues. And just so happens that there was also exactly 51 unique players that won the leagues. There was Guilds, who went 4 for 4, won 4. John Posma won 3. And I have who won 2, but Brinkman won 3, and John Posma won 2. In 2025, there were 22 first-time main event winners. So 26 in 2024, another 22 first-time main event winners out of those 57 leagues won their first main event. There were 21 single entry winners in 2025. So again, 16 in 2024. It went up to 21 single entry winners out of those 57 leagues in 2025. Why I think all this is important as the first topic. I know I just rambled off a bunch of stats, but new players are coming into the NFBC and winning. This isn't just these longtime sharks of the NFBC playing fantasy baseball winning. Like, there's new people, and it's not like this is like the people that won their first. It's not like some of them have been grinding over the years and they earned their first main event, but there were a couple. There's a player, not by name, his tag on the NFBC is at NL Sharks. This is the first year he's played in the NFBC. He only did 1 main event and 2 DCs. He won that main event, single entry, first-time main event winner. In his 2 DCs, he got 3rd and 15th. So he cashed in 2 out of his 3 first NFBC leagues. Bruce Pucci started in 2023. He's done one. The only thing he does every year is 1 main event. He did 1 main event in 23, 1 in 24, and 1 in 25. His first year in 2023, he got 2nd in the league. His second year, he got 7th. But this past year, he won his first main event, and he started playing in the NFBC in 2023. All right. At Mad Turtles, won his first main event league this year. He started in 2023. At Araza Maram, started in 2022. His track record is insane. He won his first main event this league this year, but he's had massive success over the past 3 years. I got a couple more for you, Bubba. I know I'm just, but
keep going.
The real thing I'm trying to show everyone is like the NFBC main event is super competitive. Young players, seasoned veterans in the NFBC. Everyone who plays in the NFBC loves Roto, and they're competing, and they're coming in the last couple of years, and they're winning. You know, there is a little bit of a learning curve in the NFBC, but new players are winning. I just want to shout out Michael Brophy real quick. And Michael Brophy, he's not one of the first-time main event winners, but what he is he won the Champions League, the first ever 2025 Champions League. And this guy's like, I don't know exactly. He's 32 or 33 years old. Okay. And he's already near the top. I mean, winning the Champions League is a huge accomplishment. So it just goes to show it's not just like there's young people playing fantasy baseball. And I know there's a money aspect to the NFBC, but 32 years old, like winning the Champions League, that shows young players are doing well. And then finally, the last guy I forgot to mention is Nathan Schwarzentraub. He won his first main event, and this is the first main event he ever played, like in 2025. He started in 2020, but he worked his way up. He decided to play a main event in 2025, and he won it.
Nice. No, that's impressive, because that's like the one thing, like, I've been playing for a handful of years now and mixed bag of success, but you, your point being like the main event's supposed to be the the granddaddy of them all. In theory, this is the big one, and it's like $1,850 now. I believe it went up this past year. So people like the price point, and then you hear all the stories of the legends of the NFBC, and they're obviously going to be in your league. There's no easy leagues, as they say. And I remember walking around Vegas last year for the first time, and you look at every set of tables, you're like, whoa, like, okay, there's that person, that person. Like, there wasn't an easy league anywhere. And but which is great to your point is like, yeah, if you can handle the price point, which is huge, you can compete still. That's the beauty of it. Like, anybody could walk in here and do it because it seems so intimidating, but it's just another fantasy baseball league. And I guess it comes down to how much time you want to put into it, how much knowledge you want to put into it, and effort, all that good stuff. And you too can compete. It's obviously different than like a 12-team OC or a DC or all the other formats. The auctions get wild, of course, but the fact that you can do a main event, you can do it online, you can do it in person. We're going to talk about that later in the show, but it's good to see, especially 2024, 51 unique winners in 57 leagues. That is insane to think about because, like you mentioned this last year, the Guilds won his 4, Posma has his success, Brinkman has his success. So those are big names. Those are names we know. Those are those kind of guys with the legacies, but still a ton of first timers and maybe even second timers. Like, because you're only naming the first timers. There's probably others that are still doing pretty well. And sorry, last thing I'll say here is what's also impressive is it's like a lot of those first timers, they just started like 2 or 3 years ago. So it's not like they've been grinding the NFBC streets forever and trying to crack through. They decided to get in, and they're getting out of it pretty well. Like, they're not leaving. I mean, they're getting a return right out the gate, which shows a lot as well.
And just to reiterate something, if you add up both 24 and 25, there were 4 out of the 114 leagues in total from both years. 48 of them were won by first-time main event winners. That's 42%. 42% of the main event leagues the past 2 years got brand new owners with new now main event titles on their record. And I think, just to reiterate something you said, like, I think if you're thinking about playing the main event, and I think there's 2 things. Do you understand Roto? Do you understand fantasy baseball and how it works? Number 1. Number 2, are you disciplined enough to do the work for 27 weeks? If the answer to those 2 questions is yes, then you're ready for the main event.
No, it's a great point because, yeah, it is a 27-week grind. If people that aren't quick with math, there's 52 weeks in a year. Basically half of your year will be grinding this thing out. It is a commitment, unlike any other. It's the following the news. It's the fab that people talk about, and it's no joke. Like, some of these really, really good players, even the ones that didn't win, the ones you hear about, they grind their butt off when it comes to like fab and everything else. So I think the commitment's almost more important than anything. Like, you have to be willing to do, like, it's the old, like, no days off, that certain slogan people have, like working out and stuff. No weeks off, essentially. Like, you can't mail one in, and maybe you can, but you know what I'm trying to say. You pretty much got to be in it to win it the entire time.
Yep. And you really do. There's going to be Sundays in the middle of August where life is happening, and you're maybe down in the standings in the main event, but you can make ground, and a lot of that comes from sitting down and making sure you do the work. Not just fab, but also Friday's lineup setting, looking at the matchup of lefties and righties. Like, you can get really, if you're not on top of it, it can be quick to just make lazy decisions. And the more that you're doing that less, the more that you're focusing on what is best for my team, the better you're going to do.
Yep, most definitely. All right, you got anything else on these the first time parody conversation, or do you want to dig into topic number 2?
Let's jump to topic number 2.
Beautiful. Let's do it. So we're talking auctions. For those listening to my Bench with Bubba and Bubba in the Bloom, auctions have become a much more talked about subject the last couple of years. We have our the listener leagues and other stuff. Really get into it. Ryan and I are both doing an auction championship in Vegas this year, so we're very much invested into all the data you keep throwing out there, which is awesome. So let's kick things off. What is some of the important stuff we're seeing when it comes to auction budgeting, which is definitely a priority and something that I'm always trying to fine tune, I guess.
Yeah, so one of the things you can find on my site actually is the breakdown of the winners in the auction championship. How did they budget their $260 to build a team at the auction table? So I think this is extremely important. I think that not only you do have to know there's the player analysis part of it where you have to know the values and get a good price for these players, but there's a whole aspect of the auctions that you have to build a team that can win, and you have to build it with 260 auction dollars in the process. And when things go awry in the auction, you have to know from a budget standpoint, where is your money going? If are you going heavy catchers? How much are you spending on closers? Who are you taking $40 players, or are you spreading the wealth? We're going to go through for this topic. We're going to go through the 13 in the auction championship. There were 195 teams. There were 13 total leagues. We're going to go through the winners of those leagues and find trends in the budgeting strategy that they had. Now, there's multiple ways to win, and through this data we're going to see that, but there are some trends that I think are important. I think anyone sitting down to do an auction on some level has to know like where their money could be going. It's too much to process to not have like a general budget. So I'm just going to start with some high level numbers, Bubba, and then we can get into the teams. So for the 13 league winners, they averaged, this was their average of those 13 teams. This was how they budgeted positionally. On the hitting side was $165.5 average of those 13s. On the pitching side was $94 to the pitching side. Starting pitching, the average was $69 per team for starting pitchers. For relief pitchers, it was 24.5. So 24.5. Almost no one who won these leagues, there were a couple, but almost no one was buying two $20 closers.
That's crazy.
Almost no one. And this is something I learned across the way. It's something that I'm taking into my strategy this year is like, I want to get two good closers, but I want to budget it properly, right? I don't want to go over $25, $26. And we're going to get into what some of these teams did, but the average of the 13 winners was 24.5. For catchers, it was 22. Now, and I also have averages for the all 195 teams. So I just want to point out the biggest positional difference between all 195 teams and the 13 winners was catchers. On average, the 13 winners spent $22 on catchers per team. But if you look at all 195 teams, they only spent 15. So that was on average $7 more per team. Now, you got to remember it's 195 teams. There's some people that went crazy on catchers, but that was the biggest discrepancy between the winners and all the teams, that more of the successful teams are building a strategy that involves getting good guys at the catcher position. For middle infielders, it was 42.5 for the 13 main event, for the 13 auction winners. And for corner infielders, it was 37. I also have utility at 2.5. I think that's a little like not as important because, some people got Shohei, but there actually were 0 Shohei winners in the auction championship.
That's interesting.
So that it kind of like that drastically affected the UT numbers there. And only one team out of the 13 winners had money left on the table at the end of the auction. Only one team.
No.
So that's just high level, but I want to get into some of these teams, Bubba, and feel free to stop me along the way.
Real quick, I just want to say two things that stand out, and then we can go to the teams. Is I wrote down the numbers you gave. I saw your tweet you had about the relief pitching numbers versus the starting pitching numbers, like the budgeting as we're talking about, and that's what blew my mind because especially then like the relief pitching market right now. I just did an auction, and it's difficult if you want to trust, unless you trust your system to be like under say $25 out reliever right now. So that's going to take a lot of more work and willpower on my part to figure out how to piece that one together. Obviously, it's a year by year sample. Markets change. We'll have to figure out where that goes. But as this goes, so that stood out to me in a big way because it was a constant trend throughout pretty much the entire winning thing. A few guys you said spent more, but that shocked me a lot. Second, the catchers thing, not just because I love catchers, but it was pretty awesome because like you'll hear like there's the stars and scrubs approach. There's the balance, but we're gonna punt catchers. Like I looked at a board the other day and a lot of teams went cheap catchers. Like 3 teams I think went $2 $1 catchers. Like they didn't even care. But then you have the other guys, like you're saying, these winners of ACs, they're spending on average $22 at the catcher's position. And in my brain, that says they want at bats. They want to accumulate. They want plate appearances because usually the cheaper you go at catcher, it could still be a good catcher, but they're not accumulating to the extent of some of these other top end catchers. So those two things stood out a bit. Your middle infield, corner infield numbers make sense because shortstop's going to get a boost, obviously. But second base takes a hit. So, it's interesting. But I love seeing how it's all broken down because that's one thing as I've been doing auctions. I think this is year 3 of my doing auctions now. I've done much more of this. Like I did an auction the other night and I wanted a 60-40 split. So it was basically 100 and 160. So 100 for pitching. I finished going 99 for pitching and like 161 on hitting. It happened to work. I was pretty happy about that. It's like I stuck to my plan. Now execution on who I got is another story. But I was just trying to get my reps in to say, how can I build this by learning from your site and others, like my knowledge pool. Like I talked to Mark Winoker, I talked to Mike Mager and all these guys, like trying to take every little bit of info I can get and see where it goes. So like hearing you say these numbers is great. Let's dig into some of these teams because a couple of those names I just mentioned are near the top of the finishing teams here.
Yeah, exactly. And we're going to start with the back-to-back auction championship winner, newly member of the NFBC Hall of Fame, Mike Mager. And we're actually going to be talking, he has another team we're going to be talking about too, but his overall winning team, he spent 156 on the pitching, 156 on the hitting, 104 on the pitching, 83 on the starters. He had 2 players over $30, but the highest of those players was $34. And we're going to be talking about like spreading the wealth a little bit as we keep getting into these teams. And he only had one $1 player. I'm going to be mentioning that for every team. So he had 3 total pitchers over the $10 value. And again, he spent $21 on closers. He took a Duran and a $14 Duran and a $7 Bednar. So he really got production out of getting relatively affordable relief pitchers. And he did it without breaking the bank $30+ on relief pitchers. He built his starting pitching core around Scooble and a $34 Scooble and a $22 Snell. So he only had 3 pitchers over $10, and he had 7 hitters over $10. And he paid $25 for catchers. So he went Will Smith $11 and Cal Raleigh for $14. So he really nailed the catchers. Also want to point out that his most highest price hitter was Jordan Alvarez at $31. Total wash of a pick, and he still won the auction championship. You can make up from these mistakes. I mean, he made up for it with things like a $5 Springer and a $3 Story. So he's getting a lot of value at the back end of the auction. But I'm really just breaking down the auction, the budget a little bit, so people understand how Mike Mager, a back-to-back auction championship winner, broke his team. I'm gonna kind of do it in groups, Bubba, and then maybe you can ask questions.
Perfect.
And not all of them will be as long. But in second place, Mike Mager's partner, actually, although this was a solo team by Mark Winoker in second place, he had 1 player over $30. And that was a J Ram for $39. And we're going to get into this later, but only 2 teams took a player more than $40. Out of all these 13, only 2 teams bought a player for more than $40. Mark Winoker had 4 $1 players on this team. He spent 78 on starters, and he spent 30 on closers. He bought a Ryan Walker for 18 and a Kenley Jansen for 12. So he did pay up a little bit. He had 5 pitchers over $10. and he built his offense around J Ram $39, and then Harris. He had Michael Harris for 23. And his catchers were Cal Raleigh, $15, and Moreno for $8 for a total of 23. Um, third place, David Duncan. He had a 155 hitting, 105 pitching split. He spent 24 on closers with a $22 hater and Urseg for $2. So he spent up for one, didn't on the other. He had 4 pitchers over $10, 7 hitters over $10, $16 on catchers, a Langoliers for 15, and a $1 Hunter Goodwin. So I want to keep it interesting. So I don't want to just like list off a bunch of stuff of it, but I think something that's already popping out to me is one, the closer thing. Like there's one team that we're going to be going over that really spent up like $37 on 2 guys, but a lot of these teams they got 2 middle guys, like a 13 and $12 guy, or they got a high like a hater for 22, and then they went cheap for number 2. So they had a plan that isn't just chance either. Like some of these teams are going. I just give everybody an idea. Some of these teams are going in with a plan. Like I am going to get one guy for 20 plus or whatever they come up with a number. And they don't want to, and then as a total, they don't want to go over that 25 mark. It's a good way to be able to allocate money to other places without like with a plan in place, right? So you should never go into an auction like, because you need to have some sort of plan. So, and then the catcher thing, almost all the teams like, we saw our first $1 catcher with David Duncan, Hunter Goodman, though.
That's a pretty good $1 catcher. Yeah,
it really is. And he had 2 $1 players. So again, these first couple teams spreading the wealth. Some of them, this David Duncan only had 1 player over $30. It was Scooble for 37. Okay, so yeah, he spent up for Scooble, but he wasn't going $46 for Bobby Witt Jr. There was none of that. We'll get to the teams that did. There was a team that bought Ellie for like 47. But in 4th place, Zach Betancourt, he had zero players over $30, and he had 2 $1 players. He had 5 pitchers over $10 and 6 hitters over $10. So his biggest buys were like Trey Turner for 25 and Snell for 23. And this is the guy that paid up for 2 closers. He spent 45 on closers. So he didn't buy anyone over 30, and he allocated his money to get where he spent up a lot was on closers with $25 hater and a $20 Duran. So he spent 45 on closers. All right. Douglas Gruber has 2 teams here. This is the first of his teams. He only had 1 player over $30. It was Aaron Judge for 39. He had 4 pitchers over $10 and 5 hitters over $10, and he had 0 $1 players. 0. So this is a recurring theme. Like we're going to one. There's one team that had a lot of $1 players here, but the majority of the teams here really spread their wealth. Getting more multiple 18, 17, $16 players, like multiple 22, 23, instead of getting what you can get for 47 can be split into maybe something more valuable for some of these teams that were winning. Now, like you said earlier, every year can change. So like the markets change. You should never do exactly what people did the previous year, but this is at least going into the data and guiding people on what was successful the past year.
Yeah, and it goes along with things can change, but you take like the premise, like you said, of what's going on here. So, the theme, and I bet you if we went farther back, or I know talking to Mark and Mike on my show is, they don't want to spend up for closers. Like that's just a fact. And then you see all these other guys do the same thing essentially. So there's obviously a reason behind that. I know a lot of people I talk to, not even just Mark and Mike, but like, James Anderson and other people. That's one thing I did a lot in Vegas, was go around, kind of ask people their game plan or after the fact, looking at a board with them on the screen, like, hey, what was the process? Like, did you follow your plan? Like, you keep saying plan, you need a game plan. So obviously, you have to be able to pivot in an auction. Things can change, but you have to have a plan. And so catchers is a very big thing for a lot of these guys. I know another big thing has kind of been a trend you've mentioned so far. They want to limit the $1 players to 0 if they can. Like, that's just the goal they have. And, sometimes as the auction goes and your plan says, I want like a certain middle infielder, well, maybe you have to go $1 or 2 more. Now you have another $1 player. Like, that's just the reality of an auction, but it's the plan that you're saying. So it's the biggest catch I have, and Zach Betancourt's team did it well. And even like you talk about, most teams, maybe just 1 or 2 $30 players, rarely a $40 player, so on and so forth, is the word that always comes to mind, and it's come to mind for a couple years, is balance. You want balance on some of these teams. Like when you're spreading the wealth, as you say, you want it balanced, because if people just go and start looking at boards, go and look at AAVs, do your research on the player pool, obviously, but when you're doing this, you'll see that pocket of $10 to $20 players, a lot of really good floors, It's just kind of the way the world works. And that's why, at least in my opinion, when you're talking about this, you'll see a lot of these guys are sitting in that little world. Like, they'll take a couple $20 guys, maybe a couple 30s, depends on their builds, but they live in those teens. That's where they live. And there's so many good players in the teens. If you have the right game plan in place, you can put it together. And yeah, things got to work your way, because there's 14 other managers at these tables that a lot of them have similar player pools. That's just the reality of it. But you can do a lot with like staying balanced, living in that teen world, take a couple shots up top, take a couple values down low, and go from there. One other thing I want to mention real quick, which makes me laugh, back to Mike's team and Mark's team. So you mentioned one of Mike's closers was Bednar, who I remember when you were at FPAS, you hosted the panel. He dropped Bednar and had to re-add him later. So that tells you how that whole thing went. And then Winoker, he put $18 on Ryan Walker. I think we all know how that $18 went. So it goes to show you even more so, like, even if you go cheap, that there's a reasoning, is you can find saves later, is what happens.
Yeah. And we're going to be talking a little bit of that in the third topic, but yeah, it's something that you said that caught my attention, is like, and I've heard Mike Mager, I've heard Mark Winokur talk about this, where, like, some people do come out of the gate swinging in these auctions. And, if you can hold off, I mean, those not only are those like $17, $16, $15, $14 players, like, ripe for the taking after the first break. But like, you're getting good values on these players. These are pitchers and hitters that are falling because other people went big on a couple players. So there are like ways to navigate these auctions to like take advantage of those opportunities.
The hardest thing in an auction, and I can only imagine in a live auction to top it off, is the patience. Like, you want to be involved. Like, you, even because it's a player you like, you want to be involved. But like you said, if you can just rein it in, like, part of me goes, I just want to go sit outside for like the first 10 minutes, and then I'll come back inside the room. Because then, yes, you can start peppering things, live auctions, but even online, like the DC auction we did the other night, that after that first break, it was just price heaven. Watching so many pitchers and hitters, I was like, oh, that would have been great. But that's auctions in a nutshell for you.
Yeah, and anyone who's never like, well, first off, if you've never played an auction, try the OLAG, try the online auction championship. But if you're coming to Vegas or you're going to the Godfather games, and you're thinking about doing an auction, like, I cannot recommend it enough. Like, if you love Roto, it is like the most fun. One, make sure you've done your prep and come prepared. But if you've done those things, like, it is so fun. Like, I love that they're like 5 hours, and some people be like, oh my God, 5 hours. Like, I think that's awesome. Like, I cannot recommend it. It's such a fun experience. And like, yeah, I mean, I'm going to be doing at least one every year. I mean, I'm hopefully doing 2 this year.
Yeah, it's great. It's long, but A, you're drafting with a lot of your own friends, basically. And B, it's like they have 2 breaks. They feed you. Like, there's all the drinks you want alcoholic, non-alcoholic, everything you can want to relax and have a good time. Heck, I've seen a masseuse in there giving someone a massage before. Like, there's whatever you need. It's in Vegas, and yeah, it's a great time.
All right, so yeah, Douglas Gruber had 0 $1 players. In sixth place was it was a combo team of Mike Mager and Mark Winokur. So this is technically their third team. I mean, all three of the teams, they had Michael Harris. They were really in on Michael Harris this past year. They went a $26 William Contreras and a $2 Alvarez. So they went $28 on the catcher position, and they did it like the highest price guy, and they went cheap on number 2. And they had one $1 player, and they had zero players over $30. Their highest priced player was a $28 Zach Wheeler. They also bought a $22 Schwellenbach. So and their closers were Diaz for 19 and Presley for 8. So $27 on the closers. They had 8 hitters over $10, 4 pitchers over $10. So I'm going to keep it moving. Scott Nesbitt, he had 5 $1 players. So he was one of the higher, and he had 1 player over $30, and that was Soto for 33. So although he had a player over, it wasn't like a $38 player. It was a $33 Juan Soto, which seems like a good price for him. I don't know.
It's pretty good.
I don't know exactly what he was going last year, but I bet a lot of teams paid more for that. So we got a good deal there. He bought Alonso for 20. And he also he really spread the wealth. He had 10 hitters greater than 10 or more dollars. Now, anyone who wants to go, I'm trying to keep this interesting, but all this data, almost, I would say 90% of everything I'm talking about today is accessible on my site. So anyone interested in looking up what those 10 players were, it's pretty easy to go find that. I'm going to be trying to do more things to show people how to do that as well. But I just want to point out that I use my own site to help me with this pod. So, and that's what I love about it. I love looking in this data. All right, that was the 7th winner. So we've got 6 more. I'm going to quickly go through it, Bubba. I'm going to keep it high level. Douglas Gruber with the second team, he had 1 $1 player, and he had zero players over $30. His highest priced player was a $24 O'Neal Cruz. He also had a $23 Schwellenbach. And a $20 Bellinger, but that was only 3 players, $20 or more. He had 10 hitters over $10 or more, 3 pitchers over $10. So really spread the wealth. This team, Douglas Gruber is one of the elite players in the NFBC. Mm-hmm. He partners with Paulsma. This team was a solo team, though, I think, and it's just something that stood out for his strategy is really spread the wealth. The 9th team that won, there's 13, is Zachary Waxman, who we all know and love. And he had 2 players over $30, but they were 33 and 30. He had a $30 Crochet and a $33 Tatis. So he didn't, for this team, it wasn't like he had 2 players over 30, but it was just barely over 30. He went $22 on closers, $16 Duran, $6 Chapman, and he had 8 hitters over $10, and he had 2 $1 players. Brody John. Okay, this is one of I would say a lot of people consider Brody John the greatest auction player in the NFBC. He won the Diamond auction 4 or 5 years out of the last 7 years. And he was in the Champions League this past year. So he's one of the anomalies of the teams we're talking about. He had 9 $1 players. So something I noticed, and it's not just this team. I looked into a couple other Brody John teams. I don't have the exact numbers, but Brody John is willing to spend money at the beginning of the auction, and he wins that way. So he won this league. He had 2 players, but again, he had 2 players over $30. $34 Soto and a $31 Gunner. So although he had 9 $1 players, he didn't have a player over $34. So he was able to really spread the money throughout. He had Burns for 23, Christopher Sanchez for 18, Robbie Ray for 17. He had a Mookie for 29. He was able to get more $20 players. He bought a $27 William Contreras because of all the $1 and not spending. He spent in the beginning, but not like the crazy levels. And I thought that was interesting. He had 9 $1 players and he won the league. And then the final 3 teams, Brian Slack and Jordan Rosenblum was a partner on this team. I was actually in this league. They had 2 players over $30. It was $36 Scooble and a $34 Vlad. $25 on closers. Presley, Suarez. They actually bought a third one in voucher too for $2. In 12, Joe Anthony. Oh, and Brian Slack had zero $1 players. I just want to point that out. And for anyone that doesn't know, if you have 0 $1 players, what that also means is they were one of the first people done with the auction. And when you're at these auction tables, like sometimes the players that have buying all the $1, they're still making picks, and some people are filled up their team waiting for the reserve rounds. Like that's Brian Slack. He had 0 $1 players. He was wrapped up probably with like 30 minutes to go before the reserve rounds. Joe Anthony was in 12. He had 2 players over $30. And these last 2 teams are the 2. So by the way, sorry, Bubba, I know I'm just.
No, you're good. You're good.
These last 2, the order, by the way, the order I've been going in is overall rank. So the last 2 players, again, these were auction league winners, but by overall rank, they were the lowest 2 teams of these 13 teams. They were the only 2 teams to buy $40 players. Joe Anthony bought a $47 Ellie. He also bought a $36 Vlad. And he had 179 of the 260 budget allocated towards hitting and only 81 towards pitching. It was one of the lower amounts. A lot of the successful teams, and again, I didn't do a great job explaining this, but they were in the 100 to 110 range. If you look at the top 5 teams, they were all like within $4 on the hitting pitching split between like 104 and 108. So that gives an idea. Again, every year is going to be a little bit different. I don't think you can say you have to be a little, and when I talk about the plan, you want to have an idea, but you don't want to be so rigid that I'm only spending 102 on pitching and I'm not ever going to go to 105. Like you want to just have a general idea where if something you get a good value, you can reallocate that money to pitching. And if you have a plan going in, it helps to keep track of it during. If you don't have a plan going in, it can feel like chaos in an auction. So I think the biggest thing I want to get across is like, these players aren't just like, yes, you want to get good values, but they're also building a team that can win and budgeting the right way. I think they all have what they probably don't all call it the same thing, but on some level they've gone through and decided like general levels of where they want to spend their money. And then the final team was the only player to spend. He had 2 players more than 30, and they were actually both over $40. So he bought a $41 Corbin Carroll and a $45 J Ram. So he was the only player to do that. And he spent $194 on the hitting side, and he only spent $60. This is the only team that he had $6 left over after the auction.
Wait, he only spent $60 on pitching, and he had money left over?
Yeah.
Wow.
Something must have gone when you have $6 left over.
That's a chunk.
Yeah, something happened. But again, like he won the league.
Yeah, he won the league and he finished in the top 15. So like not too bad.
I think this team was actually 20th, and I just want to reiterate it. These are the winners. Sometimes there's second place teams that climb up over them in the overall. I originally was going to do this for all 25 teams, but I didn't want it to be too much, and I kind of wanted to focus on the 13 winners. But
that's awesome.
He only spent, in breaking down that $60 he spent on the pitching side, he used 8 of it on closers cheap. He went Chris Martin for $6 and Foucher for $2. And his highest priced pitcher was Peralta for 15, and his second pitcher was Clay Holmes for 13. So he really and but here's the thing: he only had two $1. He only had two $1 players, but he also had two players over $40. So like he was able to manage it in the third section of the auction where he was buying a lot of like $2 and $3 guys, and he wasn't like left with like 8 $1 guys.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting that like I like how you could see most winners win a certain way. We talked about early on there, but it's also great to see that you can win a lot of different ways. Like you don't have to be rigid on the relievers, the catchers, the like 60-40-ish budget, like those kind of things. Like you can go different routes and make it work. I think it goes a lot into, obviously you have to hit the right players, but it goes into the in-season management's a gigantic part of it as well. Like you have to set yourself up for success in the auction, but you also have to be able to take care of it as the season goes along. And it is very interesting to see how it goes. Like I guess the biggest thing that they all had in common to me, outside of one team, Brody John's team, most of them tried to very, very much so limit the $1 players, if not have any at all. I think out of all the different things we want to pick apart, like the allocations of money and all that, the dollar players seemed like the biggest. Like we don't want to be in that pot. Like we want to be heavily involved in that if possible. Mm-hmm. So that was
and like Brody John shows that there isn't one way, and this is true for the one of the reasons I love the game of Roto is like it's so complex. It's like such a strategic game, and like there's not one way to win. So although the majority, 11 out of 13 teams had like 2 or less $1 players, and a couple had 0, but there was one with 5, and Brody John had 9. So it just goes to show that like again, there's the player analysis a part of it where you got to be able to recognize and buy the right guys, and you got to be able to hit on your pitchers, and we all know those things. But the building strategy, like that's also part of it, right? And especially in the third topic, the next topic we get to, Bubba, like roster construction is so important, and I think that's what I'm super passionate about. I think it's so important, and I think a lot of people like that's where they can grow their game. A lot of people have figured out how to find the breakout players and stuff, but they maybe miss on putting the whole package together, the whole team together. And I think there's so much to learn in that data. And that's why I love going through it.
Definitely. So yeah, everybody go check out fantasy.io, PHANTASEA.io, and let's hit topic 3. Again, you can go much deeper in all of this stuff, everybody. We're just giving you the brass tacks of it, but to me it's very interesting because, as Steve said, it's the roster construction. It's discussed so many times that probably annoys people, but this is necessary, and it's the most important. To me, it's the most important thing. Like if we can all draft, we all know the player pool, but putting the pieces together go a whole different direction. So let's check part 3, which you wrote an article for that you put out on X, and I thoroughly enjoyed it because last year you came on my show and we talked a lot about Posma's drafting, consistencies, coincidences of what he does, and he was one of the 3 names you really broke down in your article.
Yeah, and it is kind of this third topic is kind of like a little bit of a sequel to my first pod with Bubba a year ago. So what I want to talk about, and we're going to switch to the online championship, the NFBC OC. These are 12 teamers. I want to talk about, and I wrote an article about 3 of the best players from the last 2 years, and John Posma, Kyle Brinkman, and Brandon Waddell. And there were 4 players in the past 2 years that have won 8 or more OC leagues. And I know there's a volume aspect of this, but the 3 players that I'm talking about, actually all 4 of them, but the 3 for the article, these are very successful players. Like in the past 2 years together, they've won 27 OC leagues. And they've got a winning strategy. So I really like digging into how they're winning. So this is a very theoretical, like roster construction conversation. I'm going to just I'm going to I'm going to start with the 80th, 90th percentiles and some per slot and per week numbers, Bubba. And then I want to talk about the hitting side separately and then the pitching side separately.
Yep.
Okay. I'm going to start with 2025, this past year. In 2025, these are the 90th. I'm going to use the 90th percentiles for this combo. The reason I'm going to use the 90% is because that's what it takes to win the overall in these leagues. I think that a lot of people look at the 80%. I think that's great. There's nothing against that, but I think we should set the bar a little bit higher. So I'm going to use the 90.
80% is probably great to try to win your league.
Absolutely.
90% to you. I just want to echo it to Liz. 90% is if you want to be in the overall. So sorry.
And 80% will get you're there. You're fighting in the overall for 80%. But the numbers I'm going to be talking about are the 90% numbers. I just want to reiterate that in case anyone's thinking about it. These were the numbers. I'm going to start with the high level numbers. 7,823 at bats was the 90th percentile. We're going to talk about bats a little bit later. 1,135 runs, 343 home runs, 1,116 RBI, 208 steals, and a .2612 average. But now I'm going to break that down per the 14 hitting slots. What do you need in order to reach the 90%? That's high level, right? We need to make it make more sense. So what do you need from each of the 14 hitting slots in the NFBC, including 2 catchers? So to hit those numbers, you need to average 559 at bats per slot, 81 runs, 24.5 home runs, 80 RBI. You need 14 steals. We're going to talk about steals too. You need 14 steals per player and .2612. Now, steals are going to come. You're going to have steal guys that not every player is going to be a 5-category player to get your steals. But I'm just going to go back to the counting stats. 81 runs, 80 RBIs, 24 up. You need that from all 14 slots to hit those numbers. And that's with 2 catchers. So
that's weekly.
Weekly. And again, and now I want to break it down positionally, but now I'm going to talk per week. That's 21 and a half at bats. That's 3 runs, 3 RBIs per slot every week, 0.9 home runs, 0.5 stolen bases. But I just want to give everybody an idea, 21 and a half. So one of the reasons, and this goes back to the catcher conversation in auctions, Bubba, one of the biggest things that stands out here is how are you going to reach 559 at bats per slot with a dud at the catcher 2 slot? And I think there's different philosophies around catchers, but by getting production out of the catcher slots, you can really help your chances at meeting these goals. And I think that's really important. And because you need 80 runs and 81 RBIs per slot. Like there's barely any catchers doing that, right? So if you get a catcher that's only getting you 40 runs and 45 RBI, like, yeah, that's not as bad as it could be, but like you're hurt. Everyone else you have to have players that are you need those 100-run players. You need those Trey Turners and those Sotos, and you need your first-round bats to make up for the gaps you're going to have at other slots. Not every slot's equal. So the first thing I want to do, and I hope this is interesting for people. The first thing I want to do is I want to break down how I see the hitting side, Bubba. And any questions you have that come up, please stop me. And it's all about hitting these per slot numbers, right? In my opinion, and we're talking about the OC, where you need these percentiles are higher than what they are in the main event. Now, the main event is also super tough. You need high numbers too, but it's even more so in the OC. The successful teams and anyone that looks at the top of the overall, and you can look at all the drafts in order on the site of who they were taking last year. And I didn't want to go too team specific. I wanted to keep this interesting and keep people thinking about how they're going to build their team. So here's how I think about it. You're trying on the hitting side, you're trying to build a core of players that together are outproducing the per slot numbers, right? Because you're not going to have all 14 slots outproducing, but you might have a group of 9 of them together that are hitting those targets, right? So when you go look at the drafts from the previous years and you look at what John Paulsma or Kyle Brinkman or Brandon Waddell was doing, look at how they're building their offenses. They're stacking 5 category players with 4 category players. They're stacking power speed guys with power plus guys. And again, I'm using a lot of like general terms, and you can go judge. Like I've done a lot of the previous last year's pod with Bubba. We've gone through this, but these players are stacking multiple correlated players. You know, you want your speed. I think you want a lot of speed in that core, right? Because you have to hit 208 stolen bases. Like you can't just get that from all like semi-playing time players. You need some core 5 category bats. And you go look at the winning teams in the OC, and they're building this way. So together, if you look at their grouping of their first like 8 hitters, you can start to see a core of hitters that together are averaging over that 80 runs and 81 RBIs per slot you need, averaging over that 25 home runs per slot. And this gets into my next topic about home runs. Like if you take one like no power guy, let's say you take Luis Arias, right? All of a sudden, those 14 hitting slots have to make up for his lack of power. So another thing that you'll see in the OC is a lot of these successful teams, they're not building. And last year, and things change, right? Last year I was completely out on Bryce Terang, and he changed his profile, and he proved me wrong, and I was super wrong about that. He was someone you could build with. But last year I was telling people, I'm not building with Bryce Terang for this reason. Like I need 25 home runs per slot, and I can't afford non-power guys, especially in the OC. In the OC, you need dominating offense. So I'll leave that on the hitting side. I think you need to build a core of players that are outproducing the per slot numbers.
No, definitely. And like we all talk about the 5 category players, and it turns into do you want to take pitching early to take away from those 5 category players? That's a whole nother discussion you'll probably get to in a second with your pitching side of it. But it makes a ton of sense. You get those big studs. But something you said there that I know each and every year I start trying to focus on more and more is at the end of the season, if you have a team that didn't succeed as well, you always go, I'm short on power. That's like what stands out every time. And a reason why you said it's like 5 category guys and 4 power sources, essentially, it's because you get the runs, the home runs, and the RBIs all in one fell swoop. And that's tremendous. And if they can throw in a decent batting average, you got 4 categories that are really well. And one thing you can find on the waiver wire, we talked about saves earlier, is you can find speed off and on, where you're not going to find a guy that's going to hit you 35 home runs very often. So there's those type of things. And it's a mindset to the roster construction, which you talked about. And like something I try to tell people a lot, I try to obviously follow my own words on this, is when you're building your draft, it's like, yes, there's names, there's faces, obviously. But in the end, all you care about is that accumulated stat line. It doesn't matter how it got there in theory. So if like it makes you feel uncomfortable to take a player, but in reality, it's getting you what you need to fill out this team, that's probably where your brain should go. Like it's to your Bryce Terang point. Like 'cause I was with you too. Is like how is he gonna fit the percentiles we're looking for? He wasn't, and then he made a change. And you're like, oh crap, okay, now he kind of could fit that theory. So that's why I think it's really interesting, and that stood out to me when you said 5 category guys, and these are all. Well, you probably actually have the numbers, but it's 5 category guys and 4 like power studs and like 4 category power bats essentially. And it makes a ton of sense the way my brain's been working this offseason to see where the builds go.
Yeah, and it's not always like an exact number, right? But I implore anyone to like, especially if you're like new to the NFBC, like that's what my site's all about. You can go see like who were they stacking together, right? What kinds of, especially in the OC too, the hitting, it's on another level. It needs to be dominant, which brings me to the point I forgot to mention about the inside, which is at bats. And I know, in my eyes, there's such thing as a quality at bat, right? There's a fantasy quality at bat. You don't just want to strive for the most at bats. You want to strive for the most good at bats. Because you want production coming from those at bats. And if you look at the successful teams in the NFBC, it's one of the most glaring things. It's in the article I wrote. Like, all the winners, every single league winner in the OC from the past 2 years has elite at bats and innings pitch. Now, innings pitch, we're going to switch to the innings pitch in a second, but specifically at bats, the best teams are hitting 300 at bats per week. And again, that goes back to the per slot numbers. That's 559 per season. That's 21 and a half per slot. So if you don't have catchers playing, if you have catchers playing 2 or 3 days a week, it's even harder. It's even harder to reach those numbers. So it's in every overall in the NFBC, but especially the OC, maximizing at bats. Not just, there's some, it's hard to describe because I don't have a stat for it, but I think everyone can a little bit understand what a quality at bat is. Like you don't want to just run some guy just terrible hitting 199 out every day. But, the guys like George Springer, who, those guys are huge for helping you. Trevor Story this past year, who was on Mike Mager's auction championship, huge for helping keep up those per slot numbers. So hitting on those, the picks in the 200s and the picks in the 300s that fill out those 14 hitting slots are huge. And the last thing I want to say about the hitting side, Bubba, is the rest of this. I talk about like building a core of hitters, but then when you do it properly, then your 13th bat and your 14th bat, when you're on Fab and you've built everything the right way, you can focus on those at bats. Who's playing right now? Is who instead of like chasing some category, because you built a hitting core that together is doing their job, and you just need a guy that's going to come in that has got 4 left. He's all righties this week, and he's a lefty bat, and you're going to get some production out of him. It's very complex, and everyone has different building strategies, but I like talking about it.
No, that makes a ton of sense, and it allows, like you said, you get that core. You can mix and match at the end. When you're streaming guys, is this actually something that improves my team? It's not even just drafting, like in the 200s and 300s. When you're on the waiver wire, like, is this guy obviously we're talking drafting, but I'm just taking it deeper. Like when you're looking to fill those bottom roster spots, is it just because he has good matchups, or is he actually a bat that's serviceable to, like, giving you, to your point, quality at bats to your team? There's 2 different types of players out there. Like, yeah, sure, he's going to Coors, but if he's the 8th hitter, is he really, like, does the bump really help? Are we really doing this right now? Those kind of questions, but lots to think about. It makes a ton of sense. What do you have on the pitching side of things here?
Yeah, so let's switch to the pitching side. I'm going to run through a couple high-level numbers. The 90% for this past year, and I have the numbers actually for 24 and 23, but it's just too much to list off. They're all very similar. In 2025, the 90% were 1,452 Ks, strikeouts, 97 wins, 79 saves, a 3.368 ERA, and a 1.136 whip. Now, the first thing I want to say is with ratios. I have a couple points here. Ratios. In order to get a 1.136 whip, you can't just, 1-2 guys are hurting that average. You can't, like, you need dominating, like, if you look at the best players who they're building with, you need to hit at the top of the auction, at the top of the draft. You need to get a core foundation of ratios. So because the only way you're going to average a 1.13 whip is if you have 2 big guys that have a 101 whip, and you have one guy that has a 0.96 whip, and things change, and this where I've struggled the most in fantasy baseball, and I've struggled a lot, like, is hitting the pitchers, right? Like getting the eight. And specifically, it's the aces for me. Like I'm able to build out the pitch stuff, but I've really failed, like and some of it's injuries, but it's not just that. It's like I failed to really solidify the ratios and get those ace core guys to really benefit, because that's the only way you bring a whip down to 113, because you're gonna have your sixth hitter, you're gonna have blowups. Number one, it's impossible not to. You can make smart decisions, but you'll still have blowups, and you're gonna have some good pitchers like that have a 1-2 whip, and that's great. That's not a bad thing, but you have to have really dominating guys to help bring it down. So ratios are something you really gotta hit on the pitching side. And then the other point I have is the pitching slots. Okay, so and I've talked about this a lot. I think it's very important. At the beginning of the season, Bubba, you have 243 pitching slots. And what I mean by that is every week you start 9 pitchers. You can choose what those pitchers are. You can put 9 starters out there. You can put 5 relievers out there. But at the beginning of the season, you have 9 times 27. 27 weeks, you can start 9 pitchers. That's 243 slots, okay? How are you going to reach 97 wins and 79 saves to get to those levels by allocating those slots? And there's different philosophies on this. And I'm someone that's very much, I start the season and I'm throwing, I want to get ahead on Ks and wins. I want to throw 7 starters every week. I want to have a bench, and everyone, and this goes into bench philosophy too, but I want to have starters on my bench that I can make decisions with. Do I not want to throw this pitcher in Great American? Do I want to play this pitcher against the Dodgers or not? I want to be able to like make choices and not be forced to throw in that 6th, 7th guy in just because, but I also want to throw 7 guys almost every week. And I want to have 2 solidified closers. Now there's some caveats. You got to hit on the closers.
Yes.
And you got to have the depth at the pitching to do that. It's easier for me to say this than to actually, it's easier said than done here, but there's also other philosophies, right? There's a lot of people that will start the season going 6-3, 6 starters every week, and they've got 3 closers, and they're really keeping up with those save numbers. But here's the thing, and my argument against it is you need 56 Ks per week. You need 3.77 wins per week. So there's definitely a decimal you have to include there. You need 3 saves every week. So this is where, like, I think if you can get 2 guys that are providing you, if you have 2 solidified closers, not every week, but you should have a good chance of getting 3 saves every week and keeping yourself in the ballpark. And by doing that, you can throw more starts. And wins come from starts. And people will say wins are random, and they a little bit they're random, but you're going to get more wins if you throw more starts. And if you throw more starts, you're going to have more win opportunities. I know I'm saying all the same thing, but I really want to, if anything about this conversation, I want people to take away, it's have a plan. Like, just like the auction, like going into the season, managing your team, how do you want to reach these categories? Like, yes, you're left with what you have, but have a plan going into the draft that aligns with how you want to manage your team. If you want to roll 3 closers and have really, and you're like investing on the K guys and getting your Ks from those 6 starters you're throwing every week, then that's a viable strategy. And that a lot of people win that way. But I personally like to get ahead on Ks and wins so that later in the season I can switch to a 6-3. And then you'll see teams do this where they switch to a 5-4 in August. And then you even see it get crazy where like some teams that need save, and it's a working strategy, and it's all what works for you. So anyway, especially the O's. There's something about the OC that's like special to me that like it's just so fun, and there's so much strategy that goes into it. Main event too, but like the OC, I don't know what it is, but it's on a different level.
It's the Wild West. Like it's like every team looks so much better. Like in an OC, you're gonna have a hole. I mean, in a main event, you're gonna have a hole somewhere just because it's so tricky and the depth of the rosters and so on and so forth. You go to an OC, and more often than not, at least your starter should be pretty stacked when you walk out of there. And your conversation about the pitching makes a ton of sense just from the idea of okay, if you need, let's say, 3+ wins a week on average, and you're talking about the strikeout numbers you need and all that stuff, um, more often than not, 6 starting pitchers a week, let's say 1 to 2 steps, so you have 7 starts. So you have to win at least half of your starts. You have to like rack up probably on average, like, what is like 7 to 8 Ks a start. Like
Exactly.
there's just the numbers to accumulate is what you're saying. So now you start throwing 7 starters out there. Obviously, that ups your ante. Less strikeouts are technically necessary, so on and so forth. To your point, it's also a reason why a lot of people look at those 200K guys and all those things because that'll elevate you to allow you to do different things, so on and so forth. But and then saves you can get them later, like to your point, like on the waiver wire. Now, some very successful people in recent years, they run away with saves and they're dropping closers as the
Yeah.
season goes along. But like in the main event, I know we're talking OCs here. Like the main event last year, Todd Hoppy, who won it all, had enough closers and he was good. You got Scott Slezak, who finished second.
Yeah.
He was just grabbing every closer he could find and
And
running up
he
the
got
saves ladder. So yeah,
I mean, this has been talked about, and I know Hoppy was on Rob's
Rob
pod
show.
recently.
Yeah.
You'll hear him talk about this too. Like, anyone who doesn't know this, Slezak sneaked up the standings the last couple weeks. He wasn't in second until like literally the last 2 days, and one of the reasons is Zach in his league. Zach Waxman, this is a perfect example. Zach Waxman was in first place in the league, and he was way ahead in saves. He had so many saves that he dropped Pagan. It made sense for his team to drop Pagan. Now you can look at that and you can question decisions, but he was trying to make his team better. So he let Pagan go. But Slezak, and I might have been wrong about Zach being in first place in that league, because I think it was that's not true. I think Slezak was in first, but Zach just didn't need saves. But you know who did need saves? Scott Slezak. He picks up Pagan, and Pagan was like one of the best closers last year. It just, sometimes there's gifts. Sometimes and you got it. And that's another thing about the NFBC, especially in the OC. There's going to be a couple times throughout the year, you're going to go try to do your fab in the league, and you're going to see some players like, what? You're going to literally question, you'll be like, that guy's on the wire. And you like, those are the moments. Like Clark Olson, who won the main event in 2024, he picked up Blake Snell when he was dropped, and everyone questioned that. But you know what he did? He balled him. He spent up and he got him. When that happens, Scott Slezak finished second in the main event. He paid up, he got Pagan, and that was one of the big decisions that brought him up to second place instead of third place. He got $50,000 instead of $30,000.
Yeah, it's a big jump for spending some fab on some saves. But yeah, it's the beauty of the game. Lots of ways to do it. Every league's different. But hitting those 90th percentile numbers, using them not just to draft, because obviously you are using them to draft to build your roster, and drafting is roster construction, so don't get me wrong, but using those to really focus on roster construction, but also roster management in season, I think is very good. To your point, some really good players, you probably do it because you're a stats guy. You guys they'll have a sheet in season letting them know what they need to keep up and so on and so forth to kind of keep the ball rolling. All right, anything else on topic 3, or do you want to hit topic 4 as a little teaser?
Yeah, so I want to close out topic 3 with one thing, and this is just in a general NFBC statement. I think it goes with the second topic as well. Anyone playing the NFBC, I think it's important that you play your game. We talk about a lot of strategies. I talk about like the 7-2, 6-3 thing. this is a complex game. There's so many ways to win. And I talked about all those first-time main event winners. You know how they're doing it? They're playing their game. They're coming in and they're doing it their way. Yes, they're learning from people, and all the data I have available is to learn. But at the end of the day, you have to make your own decisions and you have to play Roto your way. And I think that's how these teams are winning. And I'm a 7-2 guy, and I'm going to play that way. And other people are 6-3 people, and they're going to do it that way. So I just want to reiterate that anyone like it, don't do something just because someone else does it. Look into it and make your own decisions, and that's how you're going to win in the NFBC, playing your game.
It's a great point. Very good point.
And all right, so the final topic is a teaser. This will be real quick, Bubba. It's actually the next article I'm writing. and I'm just going to joke about something real quick. I don't know if you saw on X, like, they're going to pay like $1 million for like the best article of the next 2 weeks. Did you see this, Bubba?
Yeah, I saw it. So it's all you, man. Go get them.
Well, two funny things here. One, I'm not even qualified because like I'm not a big enough account, but every article I've ever written is written out of like complete passion for the NFBC. Yeah. And like, I was thinking like, that's the kind of thing that should win that. Like, you see all these dumb things people are writing now. It's just to write an article, but like this next article I'm writing is out of pure passion, and it's about something that NFBC players talk about all the time. It's live main event leagues versus online main event leagues. And the article is about the truth and about the data. And I have a couple high-level things, and you'll hear everyone say that, oh, live main event leagues in Vegas are the toughest leagues, and live main events are online leagues have so many players that aren't doing as much work. And I'm not taking a side or anything. I'm looking at the data. I'm looking at fab data. I'm looking at how many fab moves each league's making, how much players are doing the fab every single week. And then same with at bats. How many leagues have 15 players going to the end getting the at bats? And what I'm doing is I'm building something that will tell me basically rate. I'm building some things to show me how many players actually do play all 27 weeks. There's certain ways to tell that, and I'm using at bats and the fab data to really like zone in on that. But because if teams stop setting their lineups, it's obvious in the at bat data. You can see it go down. But here's a couple high level stats. Just give everybody like there are some things that make live leagues a little bit tougher right off the bat. And the first one is total fab moves. So in 2025, there were 15 live main event leagues, and there were 42 online leagues. Of the average, these are the live leagues we're talking about right now. The average fab moves per league was 756 for the live leagues. For the online leagues, it was 721. So the average live main event league made 25 more moves per league over the entire year, over 27 weeks. That's like one extra move a week. So again, I'm putting numbers to the data so that it's not like there's certain online leagues. And if you look at it all, like there's certain online leagues that were tougher than some of the main event leagues. It's not just like, and I'm going to find out and I have some really interesting things on it. But another thing is like total fab spend. Again, there's 15 players in a league and they all have $1,000 fab. In the live leagues, the 15 live leagues, a total of $14,473 per league was spent. So that left $527 left over across all the team, like on average. In the online leagues, it was the total spend per league was $13,954. It was $500 less per league. So there is a drop off in the fab data for the online leagues, which again, I was hoping to maybe have more. Bubba, I was going to talk about it all on this pod, but
no, save it.
I was thinking that it's a perfect article idea, so I'm going to write something cool about it, and I'm going to spend some time digging into it. But I'm going to figure out, and I don't have the numbers to tell everyone, but I'm going to be able to figure out. And I already looked at a couple of the leagues, even the leagues where there's a couple people that drop out. There's still like none of these leagues have like 4 or 5 people like not competing. Like
Yeah.
we're talking about like the worst of the leagues have 2, 3, maybe 4, 2 or 3 of these guys. Like some people think that like by week 24, only 8 guys are competing these main events, but these are $1,800 roto leagues. Like these players, like, and like I'm someone that if I'm in 12th, like I want to improve that team to 8. I want to improve that team to 9. So there's a lot of people like me that are fighting. It's not just like, oh, at the end of the season, there's only 5 people competing in these leagues. These are really competitive leagues. And it goes back to the beginning of the pod. Like, if you understand Roto and you're willing to do the work, like, you belong in the main event. Like, because that's what it takes. It takes the grind and the understanding of the game.
Yeah, I agree. And that's something I pride myself in is, sometimes you're not doing great in the league, but I'm going to try to finish as high as I can by the time that bell rings on week 27. Like, we're going to keep fighting. I remember a couple years back in the OC when the Guilds won the overall, I was in that league. And it was one of my first years in the OC. And he kept messaging me going, "What are you doing?" Because I wouldn't give up. I kept like bidding on fab guys throughout the week. And he's like, "You're killing me here," making him spend money instead of like, hoping people gave up. And he appreciated it, the competition. So I'm with you on that. I can't wait to read the article. I'll make sure to pass it around as I like to do with your stuff because it's great stuff. But before we sign out of here, remind everybody where they can find you and what you got coming up. I guess that good article is what's coming up.
Yeah, you can find me on X. It's at Steve O Swerve with an extra E. And you can, if anyone's thinking about, I'll be at the Godfather games and I'll be on. I haven't booked anything for Vegas, but I'll be out in Vegas at least for a day, at least for a couple days. So come say hi and check out fantasy.io. That's PH instead of F and SEA, like the ocean C instead of Y. It's a little twist on the name, but it's a site built by someone that loves the NFBC, who's gonna be and anyone who went to the site a year ago, like the site has come so far. Like the site is improved so much, and I know it's not perfect, but this is I love this game and I'm trying to do cool things, and anyone interested in learning about the NFBC, like if you ask me, it's an invaluable resource. I think that there's things on there that people have never looked at before because it's before my site. It's been incredibly difficult to look at the data. I'm making it easier to look at it. So check it out. Again, I'm Steve O Swerve, and I'm really glad you had me come on, Bubba.
Always a pleasure. I'm glad we got to do this. I was looking forward to it for quite some time and looking forward to what's coming next for you. I'll chat it up again sometime and look forward to seeing you in Vegas for however many days that is. But make sure you go check out Stephen's website again, fantasy.io, PHANTASEA.io. Lots of cool stuff. Like I like seeing the graphs because it's easily visual on me, on the eyes. You can do trends for leagues, for players. You can look at so many individual. It's an awesome tool if you want to deep dive and lose about 4 hours of your day. You can go find all kinds of cool stuff. So go check that out. Thanks, my friend, and we'll chat again sometime soon. All right, everybody. This was Benched with Bubba, episode 815, with the one, the only, Stephen Goodwin. Catch you all next time.